Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the CASAS National News and Updates webinar. This is August 19th, 2020, and welcome. We'll be getting started in just a few moments, maybe a couple of minutes, actually. We are very happy today to have two of our colleagues who will be presenting from the Austin Community College, Karen and Sophie. Thank you so much for attending and welcome. The room is still filling up. We'll be getting started right at 11 o'clock this morning, but you are here for the CASAS National News and Updates webinar. We'll be doing a few housekeeping slides in just a couple minutes to get you situated here with the Zoom webinar format. It's a little bit different than a Zoom meeting, which you might be familiar with. So we'll do that in just a few minutes. I'm watching the number of participants entering the room, and it's a bit of a slow trickle. Sometimes with Zoom, it's more of a tsunami tidal wave. Today, it's more of a little bit of a modified hose, sort of fire hose. Well, welcome. It's the CASAS National News and Updates webinar. Today is August 19th. We're going to be recording this session. The PowerPoint is available. If you haven't had a chance to download it, this would probably be a great time to go grab it. Maybe someone can one of the CASAS people that are monitoring the chat and monitoring the Q&A box, if you could please put the link in the chat box and people can download a copy of the presentation and follow along. We'll be getting started in just a couple minutes. I have maybe 9 minutes before the hour right now. We have 100 people on board with several more hundreds on the way, so we'll be getting started. Thank you for attending. And maybe we should go through a couple of the housekeeping slides just to sort of get rolling on that. Please, can I have the next slide? Yes, if you're just joining us now, you'll notice that your phone and your computers are automatically muted. It's nothing personal. It's just something that we have to do when we have this many attendees in a Zoom webinar. Today, we're asking if you can't hear my voice or you're having technical difficulties with Zoom, to go ahead and put that in the chat box. However, if you have questions related to the presentation, you can put that in the Q&A box, which is a little bit different, and I'll be talking about that in just a moment. You might note that this webinar is being recorded and the PowerPoint is available for download. So if we could get that in the chat box, that would be helpful. But the way that you find it, if you go onto CASAS.org, and over on the right side, there's a section called What's New. And if you look down to the fourth item, there's News and Updates Webinars. And if you click on that, you will see the August presentation and some information about that was provided by our guest speakers. That's Karen Cook and Sophie Reynolds from Austin Community College. We look forward to listening to your presentation today too. Next slide, please. So just a few housekeeping tips. We have not started the presentation yet. This is the CASAS National News and Updates webinar, but we're getting started with some Zoom webinar tips. So if you aren't familiar with a Zoom webinar, it's got one neat feature down at the bottom, well, at least on my computer, it's down on the bottom, and it's called Q&A. And this is a place where you can post questions related to the presentation. So if you click on that, you can look and see open questions, answered questions, or questions that were dismissed, like already covered in the presentation. You can look for your questions and answers in there. Next slide, please. I mentioned technical difficulties with Zoom. If you're in and you can't hear or it's not loud enough, you can adjust the volume on your system, on your PC. You can go into the Zoom audio settings and adjust the volume that's coming out of your speakers. And those are two quick ways that you can notice to correct problems with the sound quality. All attendees are muted on this webinar. Next slide, please. All right, the next setting is called the chat box. You're probably all familiar with this, but today what we'll have, you can chat to all panelists, which are the CASAS employees plus the folks from Austin Community College, and they can see what you're typing in there. Or you can say all panelists and all attendees, and that would go to the entire crowd. So that's how that works. Next slide, please. Finally, the Q&A box. These are questions for the presenter that are about the information conveyed in the presentation. Any new questions that you stump the trainer with or that you come up with that we haven't thought of in advance will be added to the frequently asked questions, also called the facts, which we post currently on the CASAS website. So whether it has to do with remote testing or any of the new features, it will be posted in the appropriate frequently asked questions section. So we're just getting started. We have over 200 participants in the room. So let's go back to that very first slide and we'll go through a little bit more housekeeping. Welcome if you're just joining us. It's about 5 minutes before broadcast time. This is the CASAS National News and Updates webinar. We're going to be getting started in just a minute. Our presenters today, we have Linda Taylor from CASAS. She's Vice President of Assessment Development. We have Karen Cook and Sophie Reynolds from Austin Community College in Texas. Thank you, ladies, for attending and sharing your information with us today. Also, we have Karen Berger, who's the CASAS Field Test Coordinator, and Dawn Montgomery, who's a Technology Training Coordinator. And they're all going to be sharing information with us today. So let's take a look. Okay, about 250 participants so far. We have a little way to go. So welcome to the webinar today. We're going to automatically mute the phones and computers as people are joining this Zoom webinar. A little bit different than a Zoom meeting, but I'm going to go into the difficulty, the technical differences of those. So if you have a problem with Zoom, please put that in the chat box. And we have people from CASAS online technical support that will be able to assist you. If you have a question about the presentation, you can put that in the Q&A box. Like I see one from Amanda McAllister asking about parking lot testing. So if you want to do a little test, you can click on the Q&A box and go over there and see that there's one open question. And then CASAS technical support can read that question. And if we're brief on the reply, like we just send you a link or something, it's nothing personal. It's just in the volume of having a lot of participants and questions. Our aim is to answer as quickly as possible and try to cover as many people's questions as possible. But if you need follow-up, definitely we are available. And I think the last slide of the presentation has many of the different contact email addresses within training or orders and technical support to get you the answers you need in more detail. Let's see, oh, the last bullet point, very important. If you're just joining us and you want to download a copy of the presentations today, they're on casas.org. And over on the right side, you'll see the What's New section. So if you scroll down, the fourth item is the News and Updates webinar. You can click on that and download the August presentation. Next slide, please. All right, these are just a few slides reminding you how a Zoom webinar works. A little bit different than a Zoom meeting, but it's some of the similar settings. So the first one is the audio settings. Next slide, please. If you have trouble hearing, I'm too loud, I'm too soft, you can adjust the volume on your system. You can also go into the Zoom audio settings and check that the speakers are set properly. There's one button on there that talks about automatically adjusting the volume. And in my experience, I usually leave that unchecked just because I get a better sound quality and a little bit more consistent volume if I let it, I don't let Zoom do the automatic adjustment. Just my 2 cents there. Next slide, please. That chat box, we're all familiar with that. I see Tammy and Carol are saying hi in the chat box. You can use the chat box for technical questions about Zoom. You can chat to everyone, which is all participants, all panelists, everyone, or you can send your question only to the panelists, and that's fine too. Next slide, please. One of the unique features of a Zoom webinar is the Q&A box. This is over, it's another button along the bottom there. And if you click on it, you'll see that there are 3 categories: open, answered, and dismissed. So if I take my mouse and I go over there and I can click on answered, and I can see a question that someone posted earlier asking about parking lot testing, and I can click on the show all, which is the answer from Oscar Pena from technical support. And that's a good way that you can look and see what's going on inside the question and answer box. We have 482 people joining us so far. It's almost 11 o'clock, but my inclination is to wait just a little bit longer and make sure that everybody gets connected before we actually start the presentation. I'm hoping that's okay. So let's go back to the beginning of the introductory slides. And you're joining us now for the CASAS National News and Updates webinar. The presentation is being recorded and we'll post it on casas.org a little bit later this afternoon or first thing tomorrow morning. We have several presenters today. We want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us to get updates on some of our new tools, some of our remote testing success stories. Specifically want to say thank you to Karen Cook and Sophie Reynolds from Austin Community College, who are joining us today and will be sharing some of their firsthand experiences. And we'll have Linda Taylor, Karen Berger, and Dawn Montgomery from CASAS presenting on their individual contributions and what's new in different departments at CASAS. So welcome everyone. We're going to be getting started in just a couple minutes. I see it's 11:01. I'm not delaying or dragging my feet, but what I'm doing is allowing Zoom to have everyone enter the meeting here while we, the Zoom webinar. Does everyone have a copy of the presentation before we get started? Can I have the next slide, please? All right. I'll go backwards on this slide just because a few of you have already heard this. So the recording of the webinar and the PowerPoint are available on casas.org right now. If you go over onto the right side of the page, you'll see the What's New section. And if you go down to the fourth element, it's News and Updates Webinars. You can click on that and you'll find copies of the August presentation that we're going to be going through today, plus some information from Austin Community College. So if you want to download that, you can do that right now, or if I can get someone to type that address into the chat box, that would be superb. Let's see, as a standard practice, we mute all phones and computers upon joining a Zoom webinar. We have a lot of participants today. We're delighted, but just for manageability, we're going to have everyone's phones and computers automatically muted. The chat box is a great place if you're having a technical difficulty. I see all links in the chat are working. Great, thank you so much. We can also post questions and answers in the Q&A box. If you haven't had a chance to do that, you can click on Q&A down in the bottom and you can see there's 3 categories: open, answered, and dismissed. We tend to keep our answers a little short in here. We may refer you to a specific spot on the website or a document, or ask you to contact training@casas.org, etc., to get more information. This is not a place for us to go into a long explanation, so we'll just bear with us if we're a little bit brief on that. So let's see, next slide, please. Welcome, everyone. Again, a little bit of housekeeping before we start. There are a few tips that I want to cover, specifically audio settings and chat in the Q&A box. So can I have the next slide, please? If you hear me, that's a good thing. If you can't hear me at all, quick, type something in the chat and see if we can get someone from CASAS to help assist you. Usually there's audio settings. See where the little red box is there? You click on the up arrow and you can set the individual settings for audio as well. Or if I'm not loud enough or too loud, you can adjust the volume on your PC. I have a little speaker kind of a icon down the bottom corner and I can move that up and down. I remember I turned it down yesterday for a conference call and sure, I had to move it all the way back up to 100% volume just now. So you might want to double check that too, so you can hear. Next slide, please. There we go. I see we have in the chat the website for downloading the presentation. We still have several hundred people that are registered that I don't see yet in the Zoom room. So I'm just going to continue doing a little bit of Zoom talking here. We're going to talk about chat. I was going to say Zoom chatting. If you need to request assistance or share a comment, you can send that comment just to the panelists. You could say that to all panelists, or you can send it to everyone. Like many of us are saying hello and welcome. Thank you for doing that. You can send the chat to all panelists and attendees. But use the chat box if you have technical difficulties about using Zoom. Next slide, please. Thanks. The Q&A box. This is the one unique feature about a Zoom webinar that really, I enjoy it a lot because I can look at the ones that are opened and answered and dismissed. If you're not in there right now, you can click on Q&A, and if you click across the top there, if you look, there's 5 open, 4 answered, and 3 dismissed. So today's meeting is supposed to run for an hour. Let me see if there's any other great questions I can, Linda, is that you?
I'm here.
Okay. So the meeting is supposed to run as usual about an hour, and there are other questions in there about signing on to CASAS to access trainings, and we're going to get to those as quickly as possible. Q&A questions for the presenter. I think that pretty much sums up the housekeeping, but I still see we have participants joining the room. I'm not sure we want to start until we actually have maybe a larger quorum.
I think we should get started.
Okay, fine. So please, do you want me to run through the overview one more time from the top, or are you ready to go straight into the agenda, Linda?
I think we can get started right away with the agenda.
Great. Then please join me in welcoming Linda Taylor, Vice President of Assessments Development at CASAS. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So glad you could join today. We know you're busy getting started with school this year in whatever way, shape, or form that's happening. We really appreciate that you're taking the time out to attend today. Just want to make it clear that this is an informational webinar. It's not a training per se, but we are excited. We have a lot of new things to share with you. We're going to do an update. There is actually an update on the status of the NRS approved tests. We have the reading level indicator, the RLI that we've been talking about, and now it's available. And we have a paper version that will be ready soon. Excuse me. We have some more updates about remote testing, and we're very excited about the presentation today from Austin Community College. That you're going to hear a lot of great information from them about their experience with remote testing. We want to tell you about field testing opportunities, our new training modules, and some other things about reports and new materials for low vision learners. So without further ado, let's start. First of all, there has been an update from the U.S. Department of Education, OCTAE, and in terms of the reading goals for ABE and ASE, that hasn't changed. It's still approved through 2025. But our math goals series has been extended for 1 more year. That just was released a few weeks ago. So if you weren't aware, we, due to the COVID-19 delays that affect all of us, including CASAS, they were able to give us another year of extension on that approval. Same thing for ESL. All of the CASAS approved tests, as well as all the other test publishers that produce tests for our adult ed learners, had their tests extended till February of 2023. So that gives a little more time to do the field testing that we need to do in order to submit the technical material for our new test series. That's true for us as well as the others. So that's just so you, I'm very glad that that finally came out, so that you don't need to worry at all that there is that extension in the time frame of approval for these existing tests. Nothing has changed about these tests. It's still using the same ones you've been using, but just the only thing that has changed, and thank goodness, is that the time frame has been extended. So we have our reading goals, our math goals, and then for ESL, what's pending and we will be submitting, but a little bit later, is our reading goals for ESL and our listening goals for ESL. These are, of course, are all aligned to the College and Career Readiness Standards and the ELP standards for ESL. All right, now let's get into the reading level indicator. This is a new assessment instrument that has the main purpose of assigning a provisional NRS EFL level for students if you're not able to pre-test right away, which we know is the situation for many of you right now during this time of the pandemic. So how can you determine a student's level if you can't pre-test yet? We know this is something that you're all facing right now, and so to respond to that, as well as to be in sync with the latest memo 20-5 from OCTAE, where they suggested that an informal assessment could be used for provisional placement into an NRS level in Table 4. So we created this new assessment. It's called the Reading Level Indicator. It's Form 601R. It is a provisional placement tool. It's a simple procedure to give it and to be able to, it's easy for you, I think, to learn how to use it. And we just decided recently that not in addition to the online version, we are going to make a paper version available. NRS Table 4, in case you're not familiar with it, is where all the different NRS levels for ABE and ESL are reported to the federal government in terms of their pre and post tests and MSGs, measurable skill gains. So the reading level indicator is administered without a proctor. So it is remote testing, because if you are not having to do remote testing, you can give an NRS approved test. But if you are in a situation where you cannot test on site and you would like to know the provisional placement level of students, you can do this without a proctor. That's because it consists of non-secure test questions. And it is modeled after the reading goals appraisal, the 900R, that has 28 items in 30 minutes. So the RLI also has 28 items and takes approximately 30 minutes. We can allow up to 40. And after that, a student may be guessing, so that's recommended is not more than 40 minutes. The target audience are all ABE and adult secondary or HSE students. And for ESL, it is really geared a little bit high as far as ESL goes. So NRS level 3, which for many of you is high beginning, is where we would recommend that you start offering it to students. And below that, at the beginning literacy or low beginning level, it's really going to be too hard for them, and it's not going to be a good experience for them, and it's not going to give you good results either. So we recommend that you do communicate with your ESL learners before sending out the invitation to take this RLI. And if you find that they're extremely low level, then please don't send an invitation. But if you think they're high beginning or higher, then yes, it could be useful and you'll get a good result and they'll have a good experience. The results from this RLI are what an estimated NRS level. So an estimated ABE level 3 or an estimated ESL level 4. It does not give a scale score. It is not meant to be that accurate, and you cannot enter a scale score from this test into Table 4, only the estimated NRS ESL level or ABE level. So there are a few things really to keep in mind in terms of rules about this and restrictions. One is that it is not an NRS approved test, so you may not use it as a substitute for your pre-test or your post-test. It is an instrument that we think will be helpful to you until you can give an NRS approved test, and that is what is recommended by OCTAE, is that use whatever you can, including this RLI if you like, to place students provisionally, and then when you can, give an NRS approved pretest. So you administer the NRS pretest as soon as possible, and after you do that, then you can update the Table 4 with that NRS approved pretest result if it's different from the one that you got provisionally initially. So if you're using TOPS Pro Enterprise or TE and you use the RLI, then this NRS Table 4 in TOPS Pro Enterprise would automatically update. So that's a very nice feature for our TE users. and recommend that you check into it if you are not aware of those capabilities of TE. So I'm going to talk first about the online version of the reading level indicator. It can only be used by agencies that have implemented e-tests and TE. In other words, you have a TE account, and if you do, you may administer this RLI for free. There's no charge for these RLI test administrations. It does not cost a WTU or a TEU. It's free. For this test, there are more flexible remote testing guidelines than for the NRS approved tests. That's because it's a non-secure test. And so we've made it easy for you to use. In fact, one of the most exciting things about it is that it can be delivered on a mobile phone. Of course, it can also be delivered on any other device, a tablet or a PC, iPad, Chromebook, anything. In addition, you can use a mobile phone. It is permitted for this assessment only. It runs in a browser, and any standard browser will work. Again, as I mentioned, it does not require a proctor. And so the way it works, I'm going to go over this in a second in more detail, is that you send out an invitation from TOPS Pro Enterprise. You can send a text invitation, SMS, or you can send an email. That means you do need to enter one or both of those into TE if you haven't already. And once you initiate that invitation, the student gets a link and then can complete the test independently, again, without a proctor. So there's no scheduling involved. And that's, I would say, the easy part. So here you can see that this is where you must have already entered in the demographics section the email or the SMS for each student that you want to send an invitation to in TE. And you begin this process by selecting the students that you want to send the invitation to. And then there's a button on the top right that actually, as of today, it says Send RLI Invite. It was only activated today, so this PowerPoint slide says something slightly different, but you get the idea. It's still there in the top right, and it says Send RLI Invite. All right, so that's how it begins, by going into TE, having the student with their SMS or their email, and saying Send Test Invite, Send RLI Invite. Then, again, you can choose, as I mentioned, either only email, only text, both. There's these various options. Then the student receives that text or email. This is what it looks like on their device. We would recommend, and this invitation that goes out from TE is something that you can customize, and we really do recommend that you do. You can put your agency's logo in there so that it's clear to them that it's from you and not some kind of spam. You can advise them, if you like, to, if they're using a smartphone, to set it to Do Not Disturb. So the student, it's just a link. As I said, it works on a browser. So the link opens the browser window and starts the e-test application. It's already loaded with the student ID and the Form 601R, because that's the only test that is working in this manner. So those are preloaded. It also goes into landscape mode. So if the student isn't in landscape mode, they'll need to turn the phone in that direction. That's, again, something, if you want, you could put into the invitation, so they're not surprised by that. Another thing that's important, and again, you could mention if you like, is that the student must go through all the questions in the test and then click End Test after the 28th question to submit it. Otherwise, if they stop along the way, then you, the agency, will not receive their test results. Now, we are, as always, not wanting students to guess. And so we would advise you to advise them to answer any questions they can, but to skip any questions that they're not sure about, because the important thing is to get into the correct level for their ability level, so that they can get into a class that's right for them. So it's important for you to know that if a student, you invited the student, but then you didn't get any test from them, you might check in with them and find out if they went all the way to the end. And if they didn't, ask them to go back in through the link and complete the test. At the end of the RLI, with other e-test tests, a personal score report comes up, and it looks similar to the one that comes with our NRS approved tests, except that instead of the NRS level, it says estimated NRS level, and there is no scale score, but there is a raw score, so they will have a sense of how many they got right. It also will tell them the level that they are, and a little description, as well as the thermometer. And that information, all of it, is sent to TE through the browser. Now, there is a paper version of the RLI. It will be available soon. We're getting it together to get printed and ready to send out to you. Like the online version, it can be used for provisional placement in situations where there may not be internet, such as correctional programs in rural settings, anywhere where you feel it's something that would be useful. Again, it doesn't require a proctor because it's non-secure test items, the same test items as in the online version, and the student completes the test independently. So how we've seen that it can work is that the agency can send a package or deliver, if like in a correctional setting, deliver a package or a packet to students. The student then takes the test independently, and then later on the agency collects the materials, including, of course, you have to include an answer sheet, or the student could send it back if you give them an envelope to do that in. You'll have to figure out those logistics that work best for you. And with this RLI, you will, as with other paper tests, if you use a CASAS TE answer sheet, you'll be able to scan those into TE and avoid hand scoring. It'll get scored automatically in TE once you scan it in. Or in the instructions, there are the answers so that you can hand score them. These, as I said, will be available soon. You'll be able to order from the CASAS online catalog. There is a charge for these. And we are including it's a very short test administration directions they're included at no cost when you order the test booklets. Now, when the results come into TE, they're displayed in the, if you go to records at the top and then go to tests, you'll see this lister, and you can, if you see here, you'll be able to click on assessment type, and you'll need to activate, see at the bottom it says level indicator, and that's so you'll be able to see the 601R results in this lister. Click OK, then it'll appear. The way you can generate a report is something called the Agency Test Score Overview. So in the navigator, you select tests, then you filter. You see here, type in 601R, and then click Generate. That's up here. So that will generate the report, because otherwise, you see here, it doesn't give the estimated NRS level in this lister. So in order to get that, you need to click Generate, and there it is, a sample report called Test Score Overview that has some students, the test date, the form number, and if you have already indicated whether they're ESL or ABE, it'll only show that level. But if you have not indicated, or you don't know it yet, it will provide both the ESL estimated NRS level or the ABE NRS level. So this can be used by intake counselors. We would recommend that you contact them before the invitation goes out to instruct them, or to make sure you're detailed, you give information that they need to know. It could happen that teachers see that they would like to get a better sense of where their students are if they've been out for a long time and they're coming back in. And data managers, of course, can query TE to see any newly registered students, send invitations to them, and look at the reports to see what results have come in. So in summary, this is for quick EFL placement to give before you can give an NRS approved goals or life and work pretest. It cannot be used for MSGs. The student gets a text or an email, follows that link, answers the questions, all the questions, or skips the ones they don't know. TE scores it automatically, gets the level, marks it in TE. Again, smartphones, this is the only one instance where we're allowing you to use it, and we'd like your feedback. We hope it works well. We've tried it out, and we'd like to hear if you have anything you'd like to tell us about that we can improve that. No proctor. And it's really exciting because it's fully automated within TE. All of these processes are very slick. So we think it'll really be helpful to you. And again, it's free to those of you who are already using eTests and TE. You can start today, it's enabled. And the instructions are on the website on our remote testing page. There's a box near the bottom that says RLI, and you'll see the instructions there. There's a document you can download. And very soon we're producing a how-to video that will give step-by-step instructions like I showed here in screenshots, and that's coming very soon, hopefully end of the week or early next week. For paper, again, same thing. It's quick. It's not for MSGs. It'll be in the CASAS catalog available soon, and the instructions will come with each order. I'm going to very quickly remind you that remote testing with the NRS approved tests is how you can achieve MSGs. We want you to build it into your program if you haven't already. Please try to get started with it, even though we have so many challenges, uncertainty about what's happening even still. Equity challenges, you know, are quite serious and hopefully soon will be addressed. And we know that it costs a lot of time and money for you to do this because we're limiting you to 5 test takers, but I'm going to pass you on in just a minute to our presenters who are going to tell you some really great ways to be efficient and some lessons they've learned from remote testing. You know, there are different ways to do it, whether it's one-on-one or multiple, whether it's in one room or on-site in a parking lot. If you look at our last webinar, we told about that. Or it could be some mixture, some hybrid combination of on-site and remote, where your proctor's on-site or your testers are in the same room or in different rooms. So on-site cameras is something we really recommend and that maybe we'll cover in more detail in our next webinar. These are the tests you can use. These are the 4 approaches, and there are on the website detailed instructions, and if you go to previous webinars, you'll see a lot of detail about all of this, including the agency remote testing agreement and the proctor agreement that you do need to fill out, and instructions for going remote. So without further ado, I'm going to, we also have some videos that will help you, and they're on that remote testing page. All right, I'm going to now turn it over to our guest presenters, Karen and Sophie.
Hello, my name is Karen Cook and I'm with Austin Community College, and I'm here with Sophie Reynolds, and she is an assessment specialist with us, and she focused mainly on the programs that we CASA test in. And I think she's going to share the screen with you now. So here we go. I'll give her a chance to get it going. ACC serves students in various programs, including HSC, our college prep, and career pathways. And last year in these programs, we baseline tested over 1,800 students using reading and math goals, and ultimately we followed up progress testing those students. Most of our testing is online, but we do allow for some paper testing. Before COVID, we had worked really hard to try to integrate our students into the college. And one of the ways we did this was having them assess on CASAS at our over 10 assessment centers in the different campuses throughout Austin. So when COVID occurred and all our campuses closed, we quickly realized we needed to change our processes for assessing students while at the same time minimizing all the barriers our students face. And from the beginning, because we are a large program, we knew we wanted to focus mainly on a one-to-many testing session. And I'd like to say we've been successful with that. And by the end of this month, we will have tested CASA in over 500 new students. And today we're going to kind of show you some steps that we found that were important to creating this processes and some of the things we learned along the way. And I hope, you know, even though we're a large program, programs of all sizes will be able to take some of this information and apply them to their program. So one of the first things we kind of broke it down into like full screen, yes. We kind of broke it down into different steps. And the first one is you need to choose your virtual platform, create a schedule, communicate with students. We did some training and so had some shared resources and how are you going to have your students flow the day of testing, some of their tech issues. And choosing the virtual platform was probably a lot harder than we thought it would be because we had to have our platform approved by our university who had other platforms they wanted. So really investigate your platforms and know it has all the capabilities you need to test remotely. We decided to go with Zoom. It offered us everything that we needed. And ACC selected to use a paid Zoom account so we could have multiple hosts assigned to a testing session. We have one staff member we call like a scheduler who sets up our testing links and assigns hosts. And this allowed us to schedule multiple sessions with different staff members serving as a host and gives us a little more security knowing we can have additional hosts opening up our test sessions. But if you're a smaller program, you could use the one-to-one, the free account. I would just say you really just need to look into everything about any remote platform that you use. We also had to see how to set up the testing links. We had to make sure that we allowed for breakout rooms, to make co-hosts for our staff members. It was important too to make sure that both the main room and the breakout room had audio and video, and that became a problem with some of our choices, and Zoom did provide that, and that's why we ultimately went with Zoom. How your staff and students going to move throughout the platform and to practice that, you know, so really knowing your platform well makes for a smooth transition on testing day. How are you going to communicate in your platform? Like with Zoom, you cannot, we had the host or the moderator, as we call them, cannot chat with people in a breakout room. So we opened up Google Hangouts as well. We're big into using Google at ACC, and we would communicate that way as well, and making sure that they had a screen sharing capabilities. So how does all this look? We started off with, we sent a Zoom testing link and information to our students, and we're going to go into more detail how we do that. So the day of testing, the host will set up the Zoom, open the Zoom account, and they come into a waiting room. We customized a waiting room message where it actually says, "Welcome to ACC," so they know they're in the right place. The moderator or the host would welcome the student into the main room, and that's when we would check to make sure that they understand how to use the audio and video in Zoom. And then we kind of vetted a few questions for them, and one was like, what type of device do you have? You know, are you on a Windows 10, a Chromebook, or an iPad? We asked if they have the correct browsers like Google Chrome or Firefox. And then from there, we could kind of determine if they were ready to test. and we would move them to like Proctor A. If they weren't, or if they might have had some issues downloading the app or to their iPad or something, or it could be a Zoom issue, we would send them to another like breakout room with tech support. So that's where we kind of address some of our tech issues there. But if they were ready, we send them to the proctor. That's where the proctor would verify the student's identity, check their environment, go over all the guidelines that, you know, CASA has provided for us, and we created scripts for that, our proctors, so they made sure they were in compliance with that. And once they were done testing, we kind of figured that there's a lot of work going into giving these students links. So why don't we register our classes too? So we ended up, after they tested, we would then send them to an additional breakout room where they met with an advisor or an instructor or someone who registered them for a class. And this worked very well for us. So this next step that we had to do was kind of create a schedule. You know, how are we going to, with our staff and the number of students that we wanted to test, how are we going to create a schedule that could handle all of this? And so we realized that we thought each testing session, we were going to start with 4 proctors in breakout rooms, along with like a moderator or a host and someone to help that host. And we thought, well, we could probably do 21 students at each testing session. And then we gave them appointment times. It might have been a morning session, and we had 7 students that came in at 9, 7 students that came in at 10, and 7 students that came in at 11. And when we kind of were thinking, what did we have to consider when we made the schedule? A lot of it, we had our fingers crossed that we did it correctly, but it ended up being good. It was like the intake time. You know, now you're in a remote world. As that moderator or host was admitting them into the main room, you know, we had to check their audio. We had to check their video. We had to vet them if they had any tech issues. And if they did they go to a breakout room? We also took into account like attrition, you know, HSE. Some of our programs, we have a lot of people that sign up, but then they're not showing up. So we wanted to allow for that, so increase our number for those that would actually show up. And then the wait time for when they go to a proctor, how long does it take for the proctor to register their computer and get them started and review all the guidelines that CASA has and check their environment and check their IDs. And this really worked really well. We were surprised, but this number worked well for us. And we actually ended up, as we got better, we actually ended up increasing this number to 27. And then finally, we're at 30 right now. And then how with the scheduling, we had to think about, we had a lot of people involved in this process, how we were going to track all the parts and the people of the remote testing world. And like I said previously, we do a lot with Google. So we created a Google resource page for them. We also gave them calendar invites, and we made sure that this had the date and time. It has the session link, the host, the test administrators and proctors, and the additional staff. And for us, that was, we had tech help assigned, and we had, we actually had some language support, and our teachers and staff who did registration for them into their classes. And this is kind of what the page looked like. And at the end of this, we do have some shared templates that if you would like to use, we'll be placing those in the chat or the Q&A box, just some templates that we have shared. So as you can see, we have the date, like if it was the 19th, the morning, we have the Zoom testing link, we have our moderator or the host, we had someone like from our assessment team, and then we had assigned proctors and tech help. So on the day of testing, you know, everyone would open this page up, they had the link. In addition to that, we always had our moderator send a reminder email and a calendar invite like 3 or 4 days before, so everyone was on the same page, because we wear a lot of hats and we're really busy, so we really wanted to make sure that everyone had easy access to what their part was in this assessing. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sophie, and she's going to talk about our step 3.
Hi, yes, we had to develop a way to communicate all of this different information to our students. We ended up compiling everything into an email that we sent out after a student went through our application process. We included the technology requirements. We recommended all our students to have a computer running Windows 10, how to join a Zoom testing session, and how to download the Zoom app. The date and time of the session, when our students signed up for their date, they did not know what slot they were going to get until they received this email. And contacts for tech support and FAQs if they ran into trouble setting up their device. We also created step-by-step visual guides and short YouTube videos that students told us really helped in preparing for their testing session. This is an example of our email template. We created a short video on how to set up an iPad with the CASAS app, as well as the step-by-step PDF instructions for setting up a Chromebook. It is also important to note that even though we had strict technology requirements, we included in the email that all students had to attend the session, even if they didn't meet those tech requirements, because we also were able to give our students who couldn't test non-NRS classes.
And then the last part of this, or one of the step 4s, was training our staff and sharing resources. Even though we're a large program, we're like every program, we have many different hats, and training everyone and making sure that they were up to date on all our processes from past experiences. We know that that makes it so much easier. So we also have this shared resource page where we have easy access to our testing script. We had the link to eTest Online. We had a technology issue page where we kind of track different things and how we solved them. At ACC, we always, we make sure that all our proctors are trained through CASAS and their website training, as well as make sure we're in compliance with TWC, Texas Workforce Commission. But we also do our own training on our processes, and then we had those PowerPoints here as well, and like the links to the setting up the Chromebook. So this was important for us to have, to make sure that once everyone was trained, that they had resource to easily get to that if they have a question.
On the day of testing, we had staff arrive 30 minutes prior to the first appointment time. We had staff log into eTest Online and open the shared baseline resource page, including the script and testing roster. Proctors were then sent to their breakout rooms to wait for their first student. And the moderator or host greeted students and determined if they had the capabilities to test. After a student finished with testing, the proctor recorded the score on the shared roster sheet, as well as any tech issues a student had while testing. And then this is an example of our virtual testing roster. We had our rosters created for us by our data team, but if you have a smaller program, it is very easy and intuitive to fill in yourself. And you can see we have appointment times for each student, a column for rollover scores. Texas Workforce Commission did allow us to roll over scores as we move more into virtual testing, and spaces for proctors to enter the reading and math scale scores. We also ended up adding columns for the type of device a student has and why they couldn't test if they were unable to test. And this just allowed us to track those students as they went through the registration process. And then, as you can imagine, we do deal with a lot of tech issues in this virtual world. To help combat this, we have staff at every session to handle tech issues. They are familiar with common problems and help not just our students, but staff and proctors as well. We have breakout rooms for them. We have breakout rooms for tech help. This helps us keep the flow of the session so we can help students quickly and efficiently and move them throughout the different rooms that we have. We also have a troubleshooting spreadsheet that Karen mentioned earlier that our staff collaborate on to keep track of common issues and their solutions.
And so I just wanted to kind of clarify a few things. One was with the proctors, and the flow of a session was really important to us, and we got better with that as we went on. And so as we sent students to like Proctor A, and they were setting up a student in a breakout room, and then the host would be admitting the next student into the main room, and then we vet them a few questions, and they would send that student to the Proctor B. You know, we would go through our 4 proctors. So by the time we got back to Proctor 1, then that proctor was ready to start another student. And they usually monitored or proctor anywhere from 3 to 4 students. I know CASA has a 1 to 5, and we would go that far, but we had a lot of attrition in our program and a lot of tech issues that maybe it ended up being maybe 1 proctor to 3 or 4. And that was good, but not to say we couldn't have done 1 to 5. And we might, as we get better, we're probably going to move to that. And I want to say, like, the hardest part of this was just starting, and we were always changing our processes, constantly tweaking our processes, and no testing session was really the same. They were all adventures, but I'll let Sophie talk a little more to kind of round it out about the importance of the YouTube videos and having our students as prepared as possible. But I will say with this, before I let Sophie talk a little, was like I said earlier, by the end of this month, we would have tested online in this way about 500 students. We have our last 2 days of testing are going on today and tomorrow for our fall registration. And we will have more registrations. We do 5 a year. So, you know, our numbers we're hoping to do close to what we did last year. We don't know how long we're going to be in the remote world, but we were able, out of the students that showed up and that met with us and joined a Zoom link, we were able to test most of our students. We had like I'm going to estimate about a 15 to 17% of our students that we were not able to test because of some technology issues, and that Texas Workforce allows us to put them in non-NRS classes. And then we are working with our college to have an iPad program where we'll loan them iPads and to test those students. So we were really happy with that number. But, and then Sophie can fill you in on some more things.
Yeah, so the YouTube videos were really great. Our students gave us really good feedback on that. It was really helpful to have them sort of be walked through the process of joining Zoom and downloading the app, and, you know, going into like what registering your computer would actually look like. We went through a lot of those steps up to pretty much like putting in the registration code. And it was very helpful. Students came in, you know, they had iPads with the app already loaded on. They had their Chromebooks set up. They knew what to expect. And that just made the whole thing flow a lot easier. And then I just want to reiterate that as more of our staff and proctors got experienced with this process, we were able to help more students and add more slots to our sessions, so that we are now up to 30 students a session that we are able to test and register for classes.
Yeah. But thank you so much, CASA, for inviting us to do this presentation. And I hope that we are giving you just a little hint of things that maybe you can apply to your program. It is a lot of trial and error, but it did work. And we were happy with our outcome. I mean, I know the barriers our student face are amazing. And I think they surprised me. They always surprise me. Our students always surprise me, and they did even more so. And I think they were really prepared. But again, we will share those templates with you. and good luck.
Thank you so much, Karen and Sophie. You've done such amazing things, and I think this really practical advice that you've given everyone is just so timely. And I'm sure people will get in touch with you for more and are really appreciative of how much you've shared and how much you've really ventured into this with such care and thoughtfulness. I'm going to actually refer you to last month's webinar if you would like to hear some of these things that we did talk about last time. Social distancing guidelines, 6 feet apart really in all directions. Some quotes from others. We just need to remind you that really we want you to go forth and it is an adventure, but we really need to follow the rules about remote testing. No mobile phones at this point. You may not copy, scan, or in any way reproduce a CASAS test or send it anywhere unless there's a proctor. So please be creative, but be sure to follow the guidelines. If you're not sure, contact us and we can tell you if something is a great new idea or really not at all a good idea. We've had some pretty interesting suggestions. And I just want to mention this one thing about if you're on site and can do paper, we have gotten some information from libraries where their research is telling them that it's safe to wait 4 days. They do this with their books. And we would say, wait, if you're reusing test booklets, wait 4 days and then you can reuse them. So that's one way that you can use on-site paper testing. And that's really the only way that we're permitting that. Okay, I'm going to just remind you, it's not too late to get going with e-tests, and there's information on the website how. And now I'm going to turn it over to Karen to tell you about field testing opportunities.
Thanks, Linda. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be with you today. And field testing is just another area in which we've had to switch gears a little. Some of you are likely very familiar with field testing, but before I go any further, I want to give a shout out and a hearty thank you to all of you who've so generously contributed to field testing over the years. We're so appreciative of all your support. Field testing requires collaboration, and it's a vital part of developing new tests. Simply stated, field testing is having your learners take our not yet approved assessments. We use the information we collect from the test results to develop assessments that are valid and reliable for all adult learners. The reason we field test is to develop new assessments that meet the needs of today's adult learners. In order to do that, we need thousands of students from a broad demographic so that all adult learners are represented in the research and ultimately the tests that we submit for approval. Field testing is an opportunity for learners and agencies to be part of the bigger picture, and the students love the gift cards. Next slide, please. Here's a quick visual of the testing development process. As you can see, this involves many stages. The process is ongoing and often requires several years of work. Field testing plays an integral role in this process. Next slide, please. The final stage of field testing in the test development process involves final form studies. We began these studies for our new series in February of this year. And as you know, many initiatives have been in a holding pattern since mid to late March. Field testing is no exception. We are so excited to be resuming these studies and hope you'll consider participating. When approved, the new series will replace the current Life and Work series with 5 skill levels in both listening and reading for ESL. Next slide, please. We are conducting these studies now through December 2020. We may continue into the spring semester as needed. ESL and ABE students whose first language is not English may participate. Field tests can be administered with e-tests, either on-site or through remote testing. Paper and pencil field testing materials will be made available once CASAS staff is able to return to the office. There is no cost for field testing materials, and the field tests do not consume web test units. We work closely with your staff, set you up with testing sessions, and provide detailed test administration instructions to help ensure a smooth delivery. And field testing will not affect your regular program testing. In appreciation of their time and effort, your earners will your learners will earn a $5 gift card for each field test they complete. Participating agencies will also receive 100 complimentary web test students for each modality. Next slide, please. We need thousands of students to participate so we can thoroughly conduct our research and submit the assessments for NRS approval. Even if you are unable to participate at the moment, we hope you'll consider it in the upcoming months. If you're interested, please contact me or just email fieldtesting@casas.org and we'll get back with you for more information and answer any questions you might have. Thanks so much for considering this opportunity. Back to you, Linda.
All right, I'll now ask Dawn Montgomery from CASAS to give us an update on training, on these different topics in training. Dawn?
Thank you, Linda. Hi, folks. We are pleased to share training updates with you today. If you have any questions about CASAS training, please contact training@casas.org. I will share some information about the new training modules and address recertification in the current program year. Afterwards, I will take you to the training website to show you how our new training is organized and how simply it is to enroll in training. Next slide, please. CASAS implementation is now offered in 4 new online self-paced training modules. These modules are organized by implementation type and list the training required for that type of implementation, such as if you administer e-tests or paper tests. You will notice that Module 1 is listed in each of these areas of implementation. This is because CASAS Implementation Basics is universal and applies to all areas of implementation. So if you use e-tests and paper tests, you only need to complete Module 1 once, because Module 1 is the same for each area of implementation. Module 4 is also listed in each area of implementation because it is highly recommended to get the most benefit from interpreting test results and reports for improving instruction and program outcomes. Please note that completion of these online training modules certifies individuals to use CASAS materials and does not certify individuals to train others. Instead, we recommend that each individual involved with using CASAS complete the online modules that apply to implementation at their agency. Next slide, please. Some of you may not be aware that registration is no longer required to access the training modules. Now you can go directly to training.casas.org, or you can access the training site from the online training button on the CASAS website homepage. Next slide, please. With the release of our new implementation training modules, we officially retired the standalone Implementation Basics training and Beyond Implementation Basics training, and are asking everyone to complete the new modules for both initial certification and for recertification. The content presented across all 4 modules is updated and will be a great refresher for our seasoned CASAS users. Some of you may even learn something new. The development of a recertification module or modules will begin soon and be available starting July 1, 2021. If you have any recommendations, suggestions, or requests for consideration with this development, please let us know. So for recertification in program year 2021, online and in person, you will need to complete at least 2 of the 4 new training modules, matching your program implementation of CASAS, and complete the new recertification modules in subsequent years. Next slide, please. The training site has been reorganized into categories containing the modules required for that type of implementation. Here are a couple of examples of these categories. Since registration is no longer necessary, simply click the Enter Here button on the training website to self-enroll in training. So now, let's take a quick tour of our training site. Can I share my screen, please? Thank you. When you reach the online destination to CASAS training at training.casas.org, you will see the new training categories for e-tests and paper test implementation, test results and reports, instructional resources, remote testing, SIT and WSCS certification, a technology category, which is in development and when finished, will have videos and documentation for using CASAS e-tests and TOPS Pro Enterprise. And a CASAS Certified Trainers Forum is coming soon. And in-person training completion portals for states conducting implementation training, face-to-face and in live webinars. To enroll in training, simply click the module title. You will be prompted to log in and automatically redirected to the training module to click Enter Here. And that concludes the live tour of our training website. Linda?
All right, thank you. So we are out of time here, so I would recommend that, let's see. Let me see. Why is that not working? Okay. Sorry. Let me get this up here. Here we have some, oh, I don't know why it's not going. All right, sorry, here we go. Just want to share with you that there are some emails if you have specific questions about any of the areas related to CASAS, general questions about orders, if you tech support, this is where you would email training, e-tests, or remote testing. So please feel free to contact us. We also, on the website, have our archives of previous monthly webinars where you'll see detailed information about remote testing, about some updates that we shared last time, for example, with to do with low vision materials, and some additions to our report, including our reports, including HSE for both GED and HiSET results and the likelihood to pass. So we will refer you to those previous webinars to see about those. And we really hope that you enjoyed the presentation today, and especially the one from ACC. As I think we've been saying in the chat and the Q&A, we will be sharing their presentation as well as the support materials that they mentioned, their templates and all, and with information about how you can contact them, and they're very generous, I'm sure, with getting back to you about your questions. So thank you for attending today. We hope it was informative, and we look forward to having you at our next monthly webinar in September. We'll stay on a little longer in case anybody has any more questions. Again, thanks everyone for attending. We're going to now close down the session and hope to see you again next month.